For the past couple of seasons, I thought there were three things holding the Chicago Bears back from that full and complete, total, top-down, bottom-up rebuild that the organization needed. Number one, obviously, was Jay Cutler. And after 8 seasons of the never-ending waste of time that was the Jay Cutler experience that delivered one playoff victory, one playoff appearance, he was finally sent packing after 2016. Thank God. The second hurdle was John Fox, because I always thought it was very odd to bring him into this team that needed to completely be blown up and totally rebuilt. This guy that you could sit there and focus on, well, he helped turn around Carolina, and he helped turn around Denver. The fact is, Denver sent him packing for a reason. That should have been a warning sign, as I talked about a few years ago when the hiring was announced. That ding-dong, dumb dicks, there might be something wrong here. Bringing him in with this kind of outdated conservative philosophy that was only going to take you so far, and as the Bears found out, it really didn't take them anywhere whatsoever. Until they got rid of John Fox, the rebuild was never going to really kick off. It was never really going to happen. Thankfully, he has been fired. 3 more years wasted. What's the difference? As a Bears fan, since that Super Bowl season of 2006, they've made the playoffs one time in the past 11 seasons. And it's been 7 straight years now, with 2017 factored in, since the Bears made the playoffs. 7 straight years they missed the playoffs. 10 out of the last 11. It's been an awful lot of crap since that Super Bowl 41 loss. And the third component of the full and complete rebuild was getting a young quarterback, drafting a young quarterback high, and actually building the team around him. Whether or not he's going to be the guy remains to be seen. But at least Ryan Pace has now taken care of all 3 components that indicates this team is truly ready to begin the rebuilding project. We wasted a few seasons because, of course, that's what the Bears would do under McCaskey leadership. But we're here now. No more Jay Cutler. John Fox is also in the rearview mirror. Now we're in the era of Mitchell Trubisky. The rebuild has officially begun. Glory, glory, hallelujah. But 2017 was still another exercise in futility, just counting down 16 games that didn't matter worth a crap in the grand scheme of things, because you knew this team was not going anywhere. You knew this team hadn't gotten a whole lot better. You knew this team had incompetent leadership at the top, meaning John Fox, and specifically on the offensive side of the ball. And then you look at the signing of Mike Glennon, which at the time I said, it's anybody better than Cutler. And because it ultimately was, it helped facilitate getting Jay Cutler the hell out of town. They had to spend that money on somebody. They bring in Mike Glennon. But of course, that meant that they started Mike Glennon for 4 games, even though he really showed you nothing in the preseason. Knowing you had taken this kid number 2 overall after trading up for him, this was a clear example of the front office had one vision in mind and the coaching staff wanted to go in a different direction. So we had to waste 4 games with Mike Glennon before we got to the Mitch Trubisky era. Another lost season for the Chicago Bears, of course, because of course it would fucking be. Because so many of them have been lost seasons over the past 2.5 decades. When you look at the negatives for this team, and part of the reason why John Fox should have been shown the door, no excuses or defenses can be made that are valid or legitimate. If you're going to bring them, please go on somebody else's video and live in your cycle of spin of Bears delusiondom. They were 0-6 in the NFC North. They didn't win a single divisional game this year. That even includes a matchup against Brett Hundley and the Green Bay Packers. They couldn't even beat Brett Hundley. They went 0-6 in the NFC North. 0-4 in the goddamn division. 32nd in the league in passing yards. 31st in the league offensively in total yards per game. You wonder why the hell this coaching staff needed to go? It's crap like that. Then, of course, you had the unfortunate injuries to guys like Kevin White and Cameron Meredith, which means the 2 guys you had penciled in to be your starters outside at wide receiver that could have maybe helped your young quarterback were lost for the year. And ultimately, that's a poor reflection on Ryan Pace. It's one thing to let Alshon Jeffrey go, that's fine, but you need to bring somebody in, competent, capable, in order to have something on the outside. And a midseason trade for Dontrell Inman is not going to get the job done. And the fact that this guy went into the season expecting Kevin White and Cameron Meredith to be his top two wide receiver should be questionable in and of itself. So, of course, it only made sense to football gods. They have to exist. They looked down and struck the Bears down and said, I strike down the face of wide receiver mediocrity. You're going to get worse. So we had to live through Kendall Wright and all that other stuff. He was their number one wide receiver. Playing out of his element, playing in a role that was not comfortable to him. And then you have the lack of development of Mitchell Trubisky. And in no way, shape, or form is this heating on Trubisky, is this blaming Trubisky, is this gunning on Trubisky, knocking Trubisky, because it's not his fault. And one thing I have been consistent in throughout 2017 is reserving any and all judgment about him, because how could you make any judgment about him with this completely incompetent coaching staff, specifically on the offensive side of the ball? Under John Fox's leadership, I mean, for Christ's sakes, Dowell Loggins was the offensive coordinator. He shouldn't be the offensive coordinator of a high school JV team. Yet here he is, the offensive coordinator of a NFL franchise with a rookie quarterback. What the fuck is that fat, pudgy, penguin-looking fuck looking like he's the freaking birth defect of a Jerry Krause love tryst? What the hell is he doing as the offensive coordinator for a rookie quarterback? Think about it. But in general, people want to look at the positives with Trubisky and cling to him and hope to him. But the fact is, he had more turnovers than he had touchdown passes this year. He showed some flashes, but he really, truly, to me, did not get much better as the season progressed. You could say statistically maybe a little bit better, but stats can be misleading. To me, he was pretty much who he was all throughout the course of the entire season. I just didn't see him get any better. And again, I completely and totally do not blame the kid, because who the hell is going to get better in that situation? It's similar to Jeff Fisher and the way that coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball handled Jared Goff in 2016. It was botched in every single way imaginable. Just terrible. Thanks a lot, John Fox and Dowell Loggins. Fuck you. But in another lost season, there were positives. The Bears had wins over Pittsburgh, Carolina, Baltimore. Jordan Howard had another great year. Tariq Cohen came in, and he was an explosive, dynamic playmaker for this team. Defensively, under coordinator Vic Fangio, they were 7th in the league in passing yards allowed, 11th in the league in rushing yards allowed, 10th in total yards. So it's not surprising the Bears, as of this recording, are desperately trying to keep Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator, which I say amen to that one. But I also look, thinking big picture, looking at the positives for this team, is I know the jury's still out on Ryan Pace, and there are things I question about him, whether it be free agency, some selections he's made in the draft, some of the moves, kind of the philosophy. At times I question it. But I have to say this, is when I start looking at teams and trying to envision where they might be going forward, and looking for teams that could potentially make big leaps forward in the next season or two, I look to their past few NFL drafts as an indication of if the production is there, very soon the production is going to match on the football field. And if it's not, it's not. And there are positive indicators for the Bears that say, based off of the drafts that Ryan Pace has had in the past 3 years, that this Bears team, under the right leadership, could be bound for a big turnaround very quickly. You look at the 2015 draft class. Eddie Goldman, their second-round pick. Adrian Amos, the safety from Penn State. Hell, you got Pro Football Focus calling him a first-team All-Pro. But either way, 2 reliable defensive starters. 2016, Leonard Floyd. He's shown flashes. Cody Whitehair, your second-round pick. Other than the fact that he can't seem to snap the ball half the time, he's a decent blocker. Nick Kwiatkowski, your 4th-round pick from West Virginia. He's probably going to be starting at inside linebacker in 2018. And, of course, the best pick out of that draft class was in the 5th round, and that was Jordan Howard, the running back from Indiana, formerly UAB. Jordan Howard, to me, has been borderline All-Pro. Jordan Howard has been a franchise back in so many different ways. And then when you look at this 2017 draft class, you got your young quarterback in Trubisky, who's shown some flashes of promise and some flashes of concern. Hard to know what to get out of him yet. Adam Shaheen showed a few flashes, but again, this was a reflection of a guy who was very raw coming out of Ashland, a Division II school, combined with the fact that he was saddled with a coaching staff that didn't know what the hell they were doing. So Shaheen got very few opportunities. It seemed like when he did get some opportunities, he showed something. Then, of course, he had the chest injury that ended the season early. But Eddie Jackson showed some promise as a free safety, the guy they took out of the 4th round out of Alabama. And the aforementioned Tariq Cohen, who also went in the 4th round from NCAA. He was kind of that Darren Sproles type of water bug, do everything type of all-purpose guy. When you start to look at where the Bears are as a team and as a roster, and you look at the past few drafts, you start to say, hey, they're starting to do some right things. They're starting to get some guys in the fold. With the right direction, the right mixing, the right leadership, this team can make a big turnaround very quickly. So, there is reason for hope, especially now with the Bears making their decision, hiring Matt Nagy to be their next head football coach. He comes from a very promising situation in that he comes from the Andy Reid coaching tree. Again, as I mentioned when talking about my reaction to the Bears hiring of Matt Nagy, is that if you want to win Super Bowls as an assistant or as a coordinator, you go coach under Bill Belichick. If you want to become a future NFL head coach, you go coach under Andy Reid. Andy Reid has produced some very quality NFL head coaches out of his coaching tree, whether that's a John Harbaugh, whether that is a Ron Rivera. He has produced some quality. Doug Peterson is another one. There has been quality there. Matt Nagy, being all of 39 years old, he won't be 40 until April. You know, he's young, he's inexperienced, but he's got an energy, he's got a presence, he's got a confidence about him. He's a guy that was a former quarterback in college and in the Arena League, so he understands some of what it takes at the position. He's been in a good situation, a good organization, under a good coaching tree. He might be that right guy. He might be that right guy for Trubisky. And when you look at some of the staff hirings already made, they've been interesting. Mark Helfrich to be the offensive coordinator, even though he won't be calling plays, he'll be helping to structure the offense and the kind of the methodology and the game planning. Then you look at them going to Notre Dame and bringing back their old offensive line coach that the Bears had for several years, I believe even during the Super Bowl time. The staff is starting to shape up, and especially if they keep Vic Fangio, the staff is going to be promising. You could potentially have that right leadership in place to at least affect some type of turnaround. Let's not get crazy talking about Super Bowl and stuff. Let's get to 6, 7, 8 wins first, then we'll start talking. So heading into this offseason, the Bears now, with the new coaching staff, will have work to do. They've got about $46 million in salary cap space right now, but they have a lot of guys that they could potentially cut to get them up to around $90 million or so. You would assume with the system they're going to run that Mike Glennon will be gone. It's only going to cost them a couple $1 million to cut him. Maybe they'll target somebody like Chase Daniel. That would seem to be a guy that would fit what they would want to do here. But Mike Glennon's got to be good as gone. Hopefully Bobby Massey will be gone. Maybe that means that the Bears could bring somebody else to play left tackle where they could shift Charles Leno where the hell he belongs, which is on the right side. Marcus Wheaton, Marcus Cooper, gone. Goodbye. Save some money. Potentially Jarrell Freeman. He can't stay positive on the drug test side, meaning he keeps flunking them. So he gone. And perhaps Pernell McPhee too. Because he's nice when he plays, but the problem is he doesn't play very much. And the Bears need guys that they're going to spend money on him like that can actually stay on the field and play. So this could get him over $90 million in cap space by cutting all those guys. And maybe you think about somebody like a Josh Sitton. Maybe you think about cutting somebody like a Kyle Long. Hey, look, ultimately, I'm not married to any of those guys. You know, it could make sense to get rid of them. Because, again, especially when you talk about Kyle Long, I know what some of you are going to say about it. Well, you've had a bias against him since the very beginning. Here's the bottom line. His guy's already approaching 30. Yes, I know he's a first-round pick in 2013, but he's already approaching 30, and the guy can't stay healthy. So at what point in time? Now, maybe you're a year away from releasing him, but that point is coming sooner rather than later, especially if he can't stay on the football field. But then the Bears are going to have to look at some of their own free agents, like Kyle Fuller. Finally pieced it together, finally showed something in 2017. I thought he was very good. Now it's interesting the Bears didn't pick up that 5th-year option. And, of course, he goes out there in a true contract year, and he plays very, very well. Plays like the 14th overall pick that he was in 2014. So if the Bears are going to keep him, they're going to have to overpay to do so. Oopsie daisies. But at the time, you don't want to pick up that 5th-year option and give him the injury guarantee, knowing Kyle Fuller's injury history. I understand it. His production, when he was healthy, wasn't anything to write home about any damn ways. But now the Bears got to decide, are you going to keep him or not? Prince Amukamura, guy they brought in on a 1-year deal, are you going to keep him? Dontrell Inman, who they made a midseason trade for with the Chargers, I would assume they'll probably bring him back. Will they bring back Kendall Wright? I don't know. Mitch Unrein on the defense, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't bring him back because he was a solid as a starter. He paired very well with Hakeem Hicks, who was a godsend for this team. I mean, they gave him big money, and he played like it and he deserved it. And then you got to go with mega punt Pat O'Donnell. Is he going to be brought back? You would probably think so at this point in time. But looking ahead to the draft, is where Ryan Pace is going to continue to have to do work. When you look at the outlook for this draft, they've got their first-round pick and their second-round pick. They're picking 8th overall in round number 1 because, of course, John Fox would win just enough games to screw shit up for getting this team a top 3 or top 5 premium pick again. Knucklehead. But you got the number 8th overall pick in round number 1. Of course, they don't have the 3rd-round pick because they gave that up as part of the Trubisky trade last draft. They've got 2 4th-round picks, a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th round. So they got some draft pick capital. They've got some premium picks. But they need to hit on the picks that they have. And one thing that concerns me a little bit about Ryan Pace is he has a tendency to trade up and go get his guys, see Leonard Floyd, see Mitchell Trubisky. He's not afraid to move up. Well, at some point in time, that's okay at times, but at some point in time, you need to stay home and do a better job of evaluating the talent and staying put and trusting the draft process and trusting your homework to make sure that you can still get those guys and not always feel like you have to force it and you have to panic. Like, I was a bigger defender of the Leonard Floyd trade up because I thought there was definitely a chance that he would have been picked number 9 or number 10. But the Trubisky one, they competed against themselves, bid against themselves, and traded against themselves. That comes down to rushing and panicking and overreacting, and some people might say that with Matt Nagy and his hiring and how quick that was, and that Indianapolis was interested but hadn't made him an offer. Maybe Ryan Pace was like, that's my guy no matter what, but maybe you convinced yourself he was your guy no matter what, and you were aggressive. And sometimes aggressive is great. I would rather fail being aggressive, but sometimes you could be too aggressive and not allow the due process to play out. And in this particular case, the Bears either need to stay put in most rounds or potentially, if the opportunity and the situation presents itself and it makes sense for them and the other team trading up, looking at trading back throughout this draft because they could use some additional picks. They could. Now, what should they spend those picks on? Obviously, the top 2 needs are a number 1 wide receiver and a number 2 wide receiver. Can you count on Kevin White and Cameron Meredith in 2018? No. You need a number 1 and number 2 wide receiver. Now at pick 8, is that going to be a guy like Calvin Ridley? Are they going to be able to find guys in the middle of the draft? We'll see. But obviously at least 1, if not 2, maybe even 3 picks need to be spent at the wide receiver position in this draft. They have to. But they also could be looking at pick number 8, investing in the offensive line. And look, the offensive line is not the biggest weakness, but it's not this team's biggest strength either. And you have a gaping void to me at left tackle. You have a gaping void inside on the interior of that line at right guard. If a Quentin Nelson is there, you have to jump all over him. Probably won't be. Maybe a Mike McGlinchey's there. Is that a little high for him? Maybe. But if you feel like he's going to be a massive upgrade over Charles Leno and you feel like he could be a left tackle for a decade for your young franchise quarterback, then you have to consider taking him. But then I also look at this team and I say, as important as it is to invest on the offensive side of the ball and build around Trubisky, and it is, believe me, we all know this, because ultimately that's the only way you're going to succeed. I do look at that 8th overall pick, and if there is a big-time defensive playmaker there, like if somehow a Bradley Chubb or a Minkah Fitzpatrick, Derwin James, Roquan Smith from Georgia, if one of those guys is there, a couple of those guys are there, you have to consider, are we reaching for offensive need, or are we taking the best player possibly available? The Bears cannot totally and completely cut themselves off from getting better on the defensive side of the ball in the draft either, because they still have work to do. Because while some of it is scheme and a lot of it is coaching, the Jimmies and Joes are not all the way there to quite match the X's and O's. Imagine if they ever do, then you could be looking at a dominant elite unit. But they need a couple of more impact playmakers. And to me, I look at it and I say at pick 8, if Roquan Smith is there, and you don't like any of the offensive linemen there, and you feel like it's a reach for the wide receiver, then you've got to take Roquan Smith and have confidence in the process throughout the rest of the draft that you can find some offensive help for Trubisky. And the reason I say that is when I look at the Bears' history, when were they at their best? Well, the last time they made the Super Bowl, they had Thomas Jones at running back, and they had Brian Urlacher in the middle of that defense. Even a little bit after, you had Mark Forte at running back, Brian Urlacher on defense on that 2010 team that lost the NFC Championship game at home to the Packers. But going back before that, Walter Payton, sweetness at running back. Mike Singletary, middle linebacker. Even in the mid to late 60s, even though the team wasn't great, you had Gale Sayers and Dick Butkus. Before that, you had Willie the Wisp Gallimore and Rick Caceres as the backs on offense. And then you have the big, ferocious Bill George in the middle of that defense as the middle linebacker. The point I'm getting at is you look at some of the most successful periods in the history of this Bears organization, and they came with a big-time running back and a stud at middle linebacker. That's always been the Bears' formula for success. When they've had it, that's when they've been their most successful. They have that back of Jordan Howard. They do not have that inside linebacker. Danny Trevathan is a nice player, but he's not that guy. Nick Kwiatkowski is a nice player, maybe, but he's not that guy. Roquan Smith could be that guy. He could be a difference maker in the middle of that defense. So the point I'm getting at here is, for Bears fans, yes, this team needs to invest in the offensive line and wide receiver early and often in this draft, but do not shut yourself off to a potentially superior playmaker on the defensive side of the ball that could arguably make a greater impact and have a greater overall effect on that team on the defensive side of the ball just because of offensive need. Ultimately, it'll be interesting to see what Ryan Pace is going to do, but some of the early returns on this draft classes, he's not going to get as much credit for as maybe he should. They haven't been that bad. They maybe could have been better, but looking at how things have played out, this is a Bears team that is poised for a turnaround in 2018. Believe it.